On the ground. Move forward. Move forward. New alleged cartel threats are calling for direct attacks on Border Patrol agents. I think we're just going to kill the people bringing drugs into our country. Don't come any closer. I can't see anything. On February 22nd, 2026, Mexico woke up to a headline that sounded like the end of an era. Welcome to Border Watch Daily, where we decode the complex dynamics shaping our borders and international security. Today, we delve into an event that shook Mexico and whose repercussions are felt far beyond its borders, revealing how a cartel can strike back with devastating force even after its leader falls. According to public reports from Reuters and the Associated Press, Mexican forces located Nimio Ogua Cervantes, known as El Mencho, near Topalpa, in the state of Jalisco. The attempt to capture him escalated into a firefight. Authorities stated he was wounded while trying to escape and later died during transport. A bounty of $15 million had been placed on his head, and authorities had long accused his organization, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, of funneling enormous quantities of fentanyl and other drugs into the United States. But what makes this event larger than just an individual's fate is that the real message wasn't just delivered in the hills, but also on the highways. In the hours following the operation, a coordinated wave of retaliation erupted, including 85 roadblocks, burning vehicles, and disruptions that spread so rapidly they strained local control, Reuters reported. Reuters also reported at least 62 deaths in this response, including 25 National Guard members and dozens of suspected cartel gunmen. As smoke rose from the charred vehicles, the country confronted a harsh truth that governments prefer never to openly admit. A leader can be reached on the ground, but a cartel can still reach the daily life of a nation. Let's now turn to the details of the operation, the key dates, and the sequence that transformed surveillance into contact. Mexican authorities indicated that the pursuit began on Friday, February 20th. Public reports indicate investigators tracked a trusted associate linked to a romantic partner. And this lead brought them to Topalpa, a wooded area that acts as a natural shield. Topalpa is not a border town, nor a port. It's a region of high altitude, trees, narrow roads, and limited visibility. If a leader chooses such terrain, it's because they believe the landscape can slow down the state. By early Sunday, authorities stated the operation had intensified. According to the Associated Press, a ground cordon and aerial assets were deployed, including a crucial detail for anyone analysing the tactical form of this intervention: 6 helicopters. Meanwhile, Mexican drug cartels are targeting Border Patrol agents with kamikaze drones and other explosives, right in the middle of the border crackdown. An internal drug cartel memo circulated stating, "Previous administrations tried to mitigate this threat, and our goal is to eliminate it. We don't mitigate, we eliminate, we take them out." This is not a decorative detail, and it's a sign of urgency, mobility, and a plan to cut off all escape routes before dawn could alter the geometry of concealment. Shots were fired by the suspect, and the agent returned fire. Shots were aimed at the helicopter, and exchanges of fire occurred with the agent on the ground. This was an individual who, earlier that morning, was being pursued by a Port Patrol agent. They believed this individual was involved in human smuggling in a prior incident. The confrontation are described by authorities as intense, and public reports highlighted such firepower that it turned this raid into a veritable battle. According to the Associated Press and Reuters, authorities later confirmed the presence of heavy weaponry, including rocket launchers. The clash forced the suspect and his guards to seek refuge. One of the most evocative phrases in the Associated Press reports is also one of the simplest. "Found hiding in the undergrowth. Amiyim." This line is significant because it reveals that the final phase was not a clean arrest at a doorway. It was a pressured search in terrain where visibility was measured in meters, not city blocks. In the minutes following contact, authorities stated the suspect attempted to flee. Public reports describe him moving with 2 bodyguards, and authorities claimed he was hit during the exchange. This is where the timeline becomes both operational and political. Because when a country attempts to capture a figure like this, the outcome is not just justice, but also risk management. According to the Associated Press, authorities indicated the suspect and 2 bodyguards were already in critical condition. Then came the phrase that exploded the story beyond Mexico: died in transit. A few words, a complete shift on the national map. To understand why these words triggered a second wave of events, one must grasp how a cartel interprets such a moment. In the Arizona district, with 3 charges: assault on a federal agent, human smuggling, and felon in possession of a firearm. The suspect was shot and is currently being treated for his injuries at one of our local hospitals. His condition is, I believe, serious but stable. A cartel is not a person, it is a system. It's about routes, payrolls, weapon procurement, and the management of fear. When leadership is hit, the system doesn't immediately collapse. It instantly tests itself, asking a real-time question: can we still coordinate? Can we still punish cooperation? Can we still impose costs? That is precisely what the retaliation aimed to prove. According to Reuters, the retaliation notably included 85 roadblocks. This figure is significant because it demonstrates simultaneous coordination across multiple points. This was not a single angry gang or opportunistic arson, but a synchronized pattern targeting highways, choke points, and visibility. On roadblocks are not just a disruption, they are a signal. They tell civilians, you will feel it. They tell local authorities, you cannot protect everything at once. And they tell rivals, the network is still alive. Then comes the figure that transforms a crisis into a national trauma. Let's be clear, any assault on law enforcement will not be tolerated. The FBI will continue to vigorously investigate those who harm or threaten to harm those who wear the badge. This will be, an attempt to shift attention and blame onto a cartel to get the attention of the Mexican government and the United States government. It's like, infighting within terrorist organizations to create, problems for their enemies. Reuters reported at least 62 deaths in this response, 25 National Guard members, dozens of suspected cartel gunmen. One bystander death was also reported in the coverage of the violence. These are not numbers that fade discreetly, but these are numbers that compel political decisions. Let's now observe the state's reaction. Reuters reported at least 70 arrests in follow-up operations. This is important because it shows the state was not just clearing roads, it was seeking to demonstrate consequences. Swift public reports also described the deployment of reinforcements and a strengthening of the security posture. The objective is not just to restore traffic, but to restore confidence, because fear is the cartel's best shield. And when fear spreads, people stop giving information. Witnesses go silent, business owners become cautious, local politics become defensive. This is how networks survive. Not by winning every firefight, but by winning the silence. And this is where the narrative takes another turn. Because the first 48 hours after a leader falls are not about who fired first, but who controls the tempo. This decision aims to provoke strong retaliation and scrutiny from the United States and the Mexican government. Although the FBI currently states that the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as CJNG, has ordered its members to shoot across the US-Mexico border at Customs and Border Protection personnel, specifically in the San Diego region. 2 clocks start ticking the moment a leader falls. Clock 1 is public order. Can the state keep highways open, commerce moving, schools operating, and prevent panic from becoming a second crisis? Clock 2 is internal. Who controls the money, the weapons, and the most important corridors? If the internal clock turns faster than the public order clock, the country gets not calm, but competition. This is the mechanism to watch, not the headline, but the handover of power. Cartels are waging war on America. And as I promised during the campaign, we are waging a war on them like they've never seen. Secretary Hex's trip to the border comes as cartel violence escalates against US agents. And Pete Hex has promised to deploy thousands of additional troops to the region to help at the border. A modern cartel operates in multiple layers. The first layer is the ground layer, the teams that move, scout, intimidate, and fight. They are visible, replaceable, and the first layer you see on screen. The second is the managerial layer, the people who coordinate safe houses, drivers, fuel, phones, and payments. They don't need to win shootouts. They need to ensure the possibility of movement. The third layer is financial. The accountants, brokers, and buyers who maintain payroll prevent disputes from exploding into open warfare and spread risk. When leadership is removed, these layers quickly align behind a successor, or they fracture. If they align, violence can decrease because orders become disciplined again. It's quieter, but the machine can continue to operate. If they fracture, and every mid-level commander is incentivized to raise funds quickly and prove dominance without delay. This usually means more extortion, more kidnappings, more street violence, and more reckless actions that provoke a harsher response. This is why fragmentation can be more dangerous than consolidation for ordinary people. It's also why retaliation itself is a kind of election. It's proof of life. It's proof of command. It's a way of telling the ecosystem. We can still mobilize fear on demand, which means we can still act. Hundreds of flights to and from the Caribbean are cancelled after the Federal Aviation Administration shut down airspace over Venezuela and even parts of the Eastern Caribbean to all US commercial flights. The Trump administration designates 8 Latin American cartels and criminal gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. We must now address the most often overlooked detail in the Associated Press report, because it's not just striking, it's structural. The authorities describe the seizure of heavy weapons, including 2 rocket launchers. This is a tangible symbol, not only of violence but also of capability. It's also part of the message that cartels in Mexico have been using for years. We are not just criminals, we are an armed presence. And this is precisely why moments like this do not remain confined to Mexico. El Mencho was the target of a $15 million reward, as Washington has spent years describing the CJNG as one of the most dangerous transnational criminal organizations affecting American communities. When a cartel leader dies and retaliation of this magnitude erupts, pressure mounts on both governments. The US wants continued momentum and visible results. Mexico must show it controls the situation without appearing to relinquish sovereignty. Meanwhile, rivals within the criminal ecosystem watch for any hesitation. If the CJNG appears distracted, actually other groups will attempt to seize corridors, recruit defectors, and spark fights that will spill into new regions. This is how a war of succession begins without anyone announcing it. And that is why the days following the Topalpa operation are more important than the moment of contact. Because while a state can clear a roadblock in an afternoon, it cannot dismantle a network if it doesn't know where the pipes are buried. After such a strike, the organization hunts for leaks. It tightens internal security, changes routes, switches phones and safe houses, and reassesses who is allowed to talk to whom. It treats this strike as a lesson, which narrows the window for follow-up action. If authorities want strategic change, they must quickly hit the second layer. The transportation coordinators, the payroll middlemen, the weapons brokers, the trusted drivers. Those people who don't give speeches, but make movement possible. When these nodes are removed, the cartel can still exist, but it becomes slower, louder, and easier to map. This is often where governments misread the dashboard. A cleanup convoy clearing burned vehicles is not a victory. An influx of troops is not a solution. The real measure is whether the network loses its capacity to coordinate. When you observe disorganized retaliation, inconsistent tactics, and a breakdown in communication, that is when a network is truly weakened. But when retaliation remains coordinated, even after the loss of a leader, it suggests that a new command node is already operational. Let's now address the impact on civilians, because this is where fear becomes measurable. As Reuters and other media outlets reported the roadblocks and arsons, travel warnings, and shelter-in-place advisories began to circulate. Business Insider reported that tourists in parts of the region were told to shelter in place, a phrase that transforms a vacation destination into a crisis zone in an instant. This is the kind of disruption a cartel desires, not only to punish the state, but also to punish the economy. Because economic pressure becomes political pressure. And once political pressure mounts, incentives shift. Local officials want calm, national leaders want credibility, security forces want authority, and cartels want leverage. What happens next, therefore, depends on the state's ability to use this window to dismantle the network behind the violence, or if that network simply survives by finding a new face. This is where expert framing's crucial. CBS News, examining the aftermath, described the future as uncertain and warned of the dynamics that follow a leadership strike. One phrase clearly sums it up. A power vacuum is created, opening the door to violent realignments. This is not a dramatic prediction. It's a description of how systems behave when control is contested. Now here's the part most viewers will miss, unless they know what to look for. The succession meeting does not happen in a single room with a single vote. It manifests through signals, payments, violence and silence. After a leader falls, 3 groups decide the future: the security chiefs who control the perimeter, and the gunmen. They decide who can move without being tracked. The corridor managers who control movement, such as vehicles, routes and paid checkpoints. They decide which routes remain active. And the financiers who maintain payroll and prevent conflicts from exploding into open warfare. Without them, no one can buy loyalty for long. If these groups align behind a single successor, you get discipline. If they fracture, violence becomes a currency used to settle internal arguments. This brings us to legitimacy. A cartel survives because people believe it will be there tomorrow. And this belief is built by routines. Payments arrive, roads reopen, punishment is enforced. When a leader dies, the routine is threatened, and the group must prove it can still deliver on its promises. If you observe a rapid return to predictable patterns, that suggests consolidation. If you see a patchwork of flare-ups in scattered locations, that suggests fragmentation. Both outcomes are dangerous, but one is easier to fight. A consolidated structure is visible, and it has a hierarchy and patterns that can be mapped. A fragmented structure is unpredictable. It generates more violence in more places because there is no single authority to curb the impulse to prove power. The state, therefore, faces a paradox. Weakening the top can create chaos at the bottom, unless the state also dismantles the managers and financiers who keep the violence organised. And this is why the smartest path is to maintain sustained pressure on the network while ensuring maximum stability in daily life. Target communications, logistical coordination, and money movements without creating a vacuum that civilians would pay for with their lives. So, what should you watch for next? Simply put, first, look for an indicator of succession, not a rumour. A sudden drop in roadblocks, a shift in the concentration of violence, a move from dramatic disruption to discrete control. Targeted internal executions that signal a succession decision. Second, monitor financial pressure, freezes, seizures, arrests of accountants and transportation coordinators. When authorities start hitting the money and the managers, it's not just law enforcement, it's an attempt to prevent the machine from reconstituting under a new banner. Third, observe indicators of daily life. Roads remain open, schools operate, commerce flows, because that's the real dashboard. And now, the suspense that makes this moment dangerous. If a successor quickly consolidates, the violence might quiet down on screen, but the machine could continue to operate under a new face. If no successor consolidates, the violence could spread further, but the machine might weaken as internal struggles consume resources and expose the roots. One outcome is quieter, the other noisier. Both carry risks. So the question is not whether El Mencho is gone. And the question is whether the system that outlasted him will be forced into a fight it cannot control. Which future do you think lies ahead? Consolidation under a new leader with discipline and discrete pressure, or fragmentation that will turn the next month into a war of succession? Tell me which one you believe and what signals you are watching.